Hey everyone, my name is Michael and today I want to have a look at how Fusion 16.6 simplifies the local development story for federated GraphQL systems. Once you have a gateway and a couple of subgraphs, local development becomes complicated fast. You have to care about different processes, about different ports that you have to wire up, schema composition, and somehow all of these components have to play together, authenticate, and stuff like that. In the past, people wired up a couple of scripts to make it bearable, but we can do better. With Fusion 16.6, we have a brand new way to work in a local development setup together with Aspire. Let's take a look. Here we can see our federated system, right? We have a gateway here that is the Fusion gateway. And then we have a couple of subgraphs here. And in front of that, we have a couple of consumers that we know. So for instance, we have here our front end that has a certain set of queries it does against the gateway. Let's actually have a look at one of these subgraphs. And we are going to take this recommendations subgraph and then we just run it from our local dev box. So I'm going over here to my VS Code instance, and there you can already see that I have inside here a single subgraph, which is called the recommendations API. And if I look at the schema file, you can see that this deals with the recommendations entity type here, and also has a couple of run-ins with other types. For instance, what recommendation contributes to user and product here. Apart from that, everything else is not on my local dev box. And the way I can wire this whole system up is by using Aspire here. Aspire is the orchestrator that Microsoft built that not only deals with local development, but we just care today about the local development story here. So what I did here is that I said I want to wire up my recommendations project here, the subgraph, and I explained that this is a GraphQL service and it has a GraphQL HTTP endpoint. Apart from that, I also wired up here the Postgres database and the specific database where we can store our data in. We also have here the Fusion Gateway instance that is pinned to a certain Nitro configuration. You can see here, if I go out of this window, we have this app ID here. So I pinned it to our gateway instance, and that makes it know about all the other services. So that this all works, we're using the Nitro composition here. And this is by basically putting a single package in here, the Hot Chocolate Fusion Aspire package, and then you get all of these things. So what I can do now is to start Aspire here. So I use the Aspire CLI. Then we can go over here to the dashboard and you can see the system is coming up. And now we are ready. The system composed against the full setup. So if I go here into Nitro, I get the Schema Explorer and then I can dive into all the things that the whole API provides, right? I can go into products and products has nodes here. Then I can, for instance, dive into the inventory item or the product dimensions. These are all things that don't live on my local system. What is nice, I can run a query like this, and then I get here the data back. You can see there are a couple of recommendations or products that have no recommendation, but if I scroll down, I can see here are actually recommendations. If I look at the query plan, and let me zoom in, then you can see that we are going through accounts, reviews, and a whole lot of subgraphs. But if I look at the recommendations API here, and look at the raw query plan data, you can see that we are going through the local transport. But all the other subgraphs actually go here through the remote endpoint. And that is a development URL that I can use to connect into the cluster where they are deployed. So this is nice. The whole system runs, but I only have to care about my subgraph. And the cool thing with this is I can now introduce here new stuff, right? For instance, we can go to the types and we go to the recommendations node, and let's just introduce here a dummy. And I'm adding here a local field, and that just returns hello. This needs to be static, and then we can rerun our system. So I'm not building it even. I'm just going back to the portal. So if you have multiple local subgraphs, you don't have to rebuild the whole thing. You can just go to your subgraph that you did a change to, and then say rebuild, and then the gateway will be recomposed. We take all the subgraphs that are deployed remotely, we'll compose these against the recommendations API that we have here, and then we can go back here to Nitro, and in our query we can go to the recommendation and then just say local field, and we can run that, and then you can see that we get for our local field hello, just like we encoded in our code, right? Okay, this is cool. This makes things easier to iterate on things. It's very easy now to extend your schema, especially if you also have the front end in one Aspire. We also wire up the whole thing for you and also can stitch in local stuff. But what happens if we introduce breaking change to our system? Let's actually do that. And the recommendation at the moment carries a reason. We're going to refactor that. Okay, what I'm doing here is I told Claude just to rename the reason to text and also update the migrations for this, right? A very simple thing. It will basically go on to the entity, which is here, then take this reason property and rename it to text. Add a couple of migrations for this, so this will work. Okay, I did here. And then it will debug against the local system. So Aspire is agent optimized, and we actually put in our Claude MD a workflow how to do this change. Basically build, make sure it builds, then do the migration. And then we gave it the commands to do what we did on the dashboard with rebuild this subgraph in isolation and compose it against the overall system. We told the agent how to do that here, right? Aspire resource restart and Aspire wait. And then we read the logs if everything is fine with the recommendation API. We hook to the gateway, and the gateway logs will tell us stuff about this change. Let's actually have a look. Okay, Claude is back. It took like 2 minutes. It has here a report. It says Nitro reported a breaking change. Yeah, we did a breaking change. But it also told us that 0 of the clients and 0 operations that it knows of are actually affected. So this, while it's a breaking change, is fine because we didn't break any clients that are deployed in production or deployed on our test system. We just get here basically told this is a breaking change, but you're fine. No clients or operations are affected. And this kind of feedback I want to have in my agents, because then they can do stuff for me. And I know I can just very quickly verify that nothing goes wrong. In my Aspire setup, I also get this information here. You can see that we detected breaking schema changes here, and I could go in the logs, and in the logs we can then see that we didn't break any clients, so it's fine. And I can now get to Nitro here, and then you can see that this field is now breaking. So it doesn't work anymore. So we switch here to text. We run that again, and then this works again. If we go down here, you can see recommendation text has now the value, and the local field also is here. So with Fusion 16.6, the local dev loop together with Aspire is really awesome. It's easy to iterate on that. It's easy to get feedback out of this, and you can let your agent run, and it actually can do changes with confidence because it gets immediate feedback if it breaks your running system, right? So if you think about your colleague that has a front end and wants to also have this nice local development story, don't fear, you don't have to force .NET down his throat. You actually can just use Aspire for TypeScript. And this really is fully supported by Fusion. You can see here that we updated our Fusion Aspire integration to also work in the TypeScript host, right? So here's also Nitro composition. You can wire up the gateway here. And you can see this subgraph here is now written in TypeScript, but there could also be a TypeScript app for your front end to support with React and stuff like this. And you get this same inner loop with the agent. So what do you think about the new integration that we did between Fusion, Nitro, and Aspire? Especially as your system grows and you have more than one team working on this, you really can work in isolation without stepping on each other's toes, right? So tell us what you think and leave us some comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.